Welcome back to Beyond the Basics, and another stage in our large-scale build of the Airfix 1/24 scale Supermarine Spitfire Mk IX. In this episode we have moved forward with one of the most iconic parts of the aircraft, the engine. If you've not seen the earlier parts of the build yet, it's worth going back and watching episode 1 and 2 first, so everything lines up properly. And if you want to follow the whole project from start to finish, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part. This stage focuses on building the aircraft's power plant, the legendary Rolls-Royce Merlin engine that powered many versions of the Spitfire during the Second World War. The kit allows two different approaches. If you plan to display the aircraft fully closed up with the cowling panels fitted, you can build a simplified engine core that simply supports the propeller and the external panels. In this build we take the more detailed route and construct the full engine so it can be displayed with the cowlings removed. The process begins with the central core of the engine, two main halves from the base of the block along with the lower sump. Once these parts are glued together, they create the structural foundation of the Merlin. The aim at this stage is to add as many parts as possible that will share the same paint colour. Around 80% of the engine will eventually be painted black, so assembling these pieces first makes painting much easier later. Next come the cylinder banks. The Merlin is a V12 engine, meaning it has 12 cylinders arranged in two banks of 6. Each bank is assembled and fitted to either side of the main engine block. Smaller valve components are added at this stage as well, and with those in place the basic form of the engine begins to appear. Another small assembly is created and attached to the top of the engine block, completing what modelers often refer to as the short motor, essentially the basic engine structure before additional systems are installed. Some parts that will eventually connect to the coolant system are included in the instructions at this point, but these are best left until later to make painting easier. Attention then shifts to the front section of the engine. A two-piece unit is assembled and attached to the top of the engine where it locks into position. The glycol tank and the front of the crankcase are assembled next, but these parts are left separate for now because they will be painted in different colours. The propeller shaft is installed into the front of the engine, and if you want the propeller to rotate once the model is complete, the shaft should not be glued in place. Leaving it free allows the finished propeller to spin. With the front section prepared, the earlier connected pieces can now be installed. These small parts slot into grooves on either side of the engine and align with the coolant tank. They can shift slightly while the glue is still soft, so it's best to position them carefully and allow them to dry before continuing. Several small assemblies are built next, forming parts of the supercharger system and the intake components. These are combined into a single unit and attached to the side of the engine. Additional pipework and fittings are added around the supercharger, gradually filling out the complex shape of the Merlin. At this stage, most of the components still share the same colour scheme, apart from the propeller shaft, which can be painted silver if visible, and nearly everything is finished in black. Once the major parts are assembled, the entire engine block can be painted in one pass, giving a consistent finish. After the paint has dried, some of the smaller components that were left separate earlier can be added. Magneto units sit on either side of the engine and are finished in slightly different colours to add visual contrast. Another set of parts representing ignition leads or wiring is assembled and attached to the side of the engine. These can be painted separately before installation for a cleaner result. The fuel pump assembly is also constructed and attached to the engine, and with this final piece installed, the main engine assembly is effectively complete. At this point, the entire unit can be painted black if it has not been done already. Even though most of the engine is black, subtle detailing can bring it to life. Adding a small touch of metallic paint to exposed bolt heads can highlight the mechanical detail. Some modelers also use graphite from a pencil to lightly brush across the rocker covers, giving them a slightly worn metallic sheen. With the engine itself finished, work begins on the bulkhead that sits behind it. Instead of installing it directly into the fuselage, it can be assembled separately first. Various brackets and small fittings are added, most of which are painted interior green. Building this section separately allows easier painting and detailing. Next come the engine mounts. These are the framework that supports the Merlin inside the Spitfire's nose. Two side frames and a central brace are assembled. The engine itself can be used as a guide to make sure these mounts line up correctly. By temporarily positioning the mounts on the engine while the glue dries, the framework naturally settles into the correct alignment. Before installation, several sections of pipework are painted and prepared. These pipes run through the engine mount framework and connect to different systems around the engine. One of the pipes fits fairly easily, while another must be threaded through the frame carefully. Some builders may choose to snip a small section of the frame to allow the pipe to slide into position without damaging the surrounding paint. Once the pipes are secured, the final bracket is attached and the engine is ready to be installed into the frame. Before fitting it into place, it's important to remove paint from the mounting positions so the glue bonds properly. The engine is then carefully manoeuvred into position, with the pipework aligning with the coolant tank at the front. The bulkhead can now be test fitted behind the engine. A little adjustment may be needed to ensure it sits flush against the fuselage structure. Some holes may also need to be slightly widened so the pipes can pass through without stress. At this point, the engine assembly is sealed with a coat of satin varnish to unify the finish. Light weathering can be added to suggest heat and wear, especially around the copper pipework. Little graphite or metallic pigment helps give the impression of burnt metal and working machinery. Several additional components are built to complete the front section of the aircraft. A small silver painted unit is assembled along with the air scoop beneath the engine. Side frames and the front section are also constructed and painted before being attached to the engine framework. The exhaust stacks are assembled next. Each stack is made from two small parts that are glued together and painted before installation. They fit snugly into place and often don't require glue. Once installed, the exhaust can be weathered using a mix of colours and metallic pigments to create the appearance of heat-stained metal. With the exhaust fitted and the framework in place, the engine assembly is essentially complete. A final test fit inside the fuselage ensures everything sits correctly. If the engine mounts and structures were aligned properly during the build, the removable cowling panels should also fit neatly over the top. With the Merlin now fully assembled and detailed, the next step will be completing the surrounding frames and cooling system before finishing the propeller and spinner, bringing the entire front section of the Spitfire together. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. We'll see you next time.